Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
It tells you a little bit about the system, and that's that there's just not enough people in that line of work to give it, the time that each case deserves. And it also highlights how many different parts of the system have to come together to actually move the ball in a positive direction. I mean, like I mentioned, these court hearings that require, both parents and both lawyers and the magistrate, sometimes the judge, to get them all in the room together. Sometimes we kick the can a month down the road, and that's doing nobody any good. So again, it's been an interesting insight for me into a system with which I've had very little engagement before, but I'm glad I can try to help a little bit.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses, so we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and here we are again with Greg Rosenmerkel, the retired colonel from the Air Force and also retired from the U.S. Forest Service. Now, after almost 2 years, he's been trained as a CASA and had his first assignments. Here's Greg Rosenmerkel.
Hey, it's Rosie again. Rosie's back.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. Do you know it's been almost 2 years since we recorded the first part of your episode?
Is that right? Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
beginning of the CASA training program. And as you know, it took a long time before I was assigned a case. So it's really good to be back for many reasons.
Yeah, it's because it was May 2023. I was listening to it this morning
Wow.
because it's so long I wanted to put it all together again. And so you actually started the training right after we recorded. That was, I think, your first training session.
Yeah, that's right. I had mostly retired for the second time around then, and I had met some of the CASA administrators here in the 9th Judicial District while I was spending some time with another nonprofit, the Western Slope Veterans Coalition, and I told them as soon as I, had a little more time, I would volunteer. I did. It took a while to get the training, and after doing the training, which took, again, the better part of 6 months, I was finally assigned a case. They were kind of waiting for the right case for me, and I was ultimately assigned a case with 3 boys.
Wow.
3rd grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. And I've been with them ever since, my first and only case.
Right. Oh, okay. So you've been with them now probably 6 months or 9 months or so?
That's right, assigned in August.
Right. So I remember you said to me on the phone, because I kept on calling and saying, do you have a case yet? And then you get 3 kids.
All brothers.
All brothers. But is that unusual in your state? Because here we only get 1 kid, even if they're siblings. Sometimes you get a sibling set occasionally, but very often not.
I don't know. I didn't even ask the question. I was kind of excited to get a case. I don't know if it's unusual to have 3 at the same time or not, to be honest with you.
I do want to find that out, and I think I'm going to be recording some of your CASA people as well in the future. So that's one of the questions, because I guess assumedly each state is slightly different, but I know how much work it is. So I'm wondering if it's triple the work or not. I don't know.
Again, I have nothing to compare it to, but at this point in time, at least all 3 boys go to the same elementary school.
That helps.
They're in the same foster home.
That helps. Mm-hmm.
The downside is both of those are new situations for them. Previously, they lived with mom about half hour away. Now they're almost 2 hours west of me. So it's a little more of a
Oh,
stretch
y-
to get to see him. I saw him yesterday, and 2 weeks ago I visited him at school. I mean, that's kind of a challenge. Try to get
yeah,
my
for me
schedule
too.
lined up with the
Mm,
foster dads, with the three boys.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm. And that
but
long drive. Yeah,
yep,
yep.
but
Mm-hmm.
they're all in the same place at the same time. So from that standpoint, having three is no more challenge to me than one. Just a little more writing.
Yeah, I remember when you first met the kids, you said, "Ah, they're great boys. They're great boys." Can you tell me about them a little bit?
Well, just half hour ago, I was talking to the principal at their new school. Just like any of us who've raised kids, it's amazing how three kids in the same household, same parenting, roughly the same genetic makeup can be so different. But boy, given what they've been through from the time I met them to the changes they've gone through in the past month or so, unbelievably resilient. Their demeanor, behavior has been so consistent from, living with mom to living in a couple different temporary foster homes right around Christmas, by the way. They were removed
Oh,
from mom's house right before Christmas and sent to two different temporary fosters before the home that they're in currently. And through all that, talking to them face to face or via FaceTime, again, you'd never notice that they were in a different situation. The boys are
really?
just so
Mm-hmm.
consistent and resilient.
It just speaks to the fact that these kids, it's amazing as just what you said, what they have to go through no fault of their own, just because their families fail them.
Right.
And then all this stuff happens to them, and yet somehow they they often are happy and get through and they accomplish and they just wrestle through it, and it's pretty amazing.
It is. And I think, some of us have been very blessed in our upbringing and our lives today with having support and relationships that help us through those things. But sometimes we take that for granted. These kids, they don't know any different. So they are who they are. When they're interacting with other kids, they don't know that their situation is that much different or worse. It's just been
Really?
their whole life. It's sad, but it's their reality.
Wow. So why were the kids assigned to CASA if they were at home with mom? Because had she lost them and gotten them back, or what?
Again, that's a great question. I'm glad to hear you might be talking to Tracy or Taryn, the CASA
Mm-hmm.
supervisors here. I didn't ask that question when it was first assigned because, frankly, I didn't know. They said, hey, we have a case for you. I started scheduling to go meet, and they were at mom's house. And I did kind of scratch my head saying, well, that's different. I think there's a lot of history with this case. I'm not entirely up to speed on all of it. I intentionally didn't want to cloud any of my perceptions with something that happened before I took over.
Really?
I
Okay,
do,
that's that. Sorry, let me interrupt. That's so interesting because here we read the full case history
and I had
before.
case history, but here's the thing. I know they had been assigned to CASA in the past. I don't have any information on who that was or why she was removed from the case. Maybe it was because they were back with mom. I don't know. I've seen the entire record as it pertains to some of the history with mom and dad, but I've had no access to, nor did I ask about the past CASA and, why that had to change.
See, we keep records that our supervisors look at, as well as say if for some reason I was removed from the case that I'm on now, the next CASA would have access to all of my notes.
I have not, those have not been shared with me, nor did I ask for that matter.
Maybe it's just different, or maybe, I mean, I'd love to know that background because if there's three boys, well, obviously, it sounds to me like they've probably been in the system already and somehow they were back with mom, but maybe the judge or whoever thought, let's keep an eye on these kids and see what happens. And then they were removed from her home, right?
That's right. They were with mom for the first, Like I said, I took over in August. September, October, November, into December, they were with mom. They were removed from the home. Like I said, it was like a week or two before Christmas.
Yeah, that's so terrible, man. Wow. And how about the dad? Where is he in the picture?
So Dad is also still local. Dad is currently prohibited from seeing the boys. There's a restraining order there. We were in court last week, actually. It was supposed to be a family time hearing, but he changed his attorney. So based on, disclosure requirements and discovery, his attorney was not ready to represent him in that family time hearing. So that can was kicked down the road for another month, too. We'll do that again next month. So he still hasn't seen his kids since, I think it's been over 6 months now.
Mm-hmm.
So again, he was out of the picture before I was assigned the case in August.
Right. And when we first got on, you said you were writing your first court report. So you've been in court repeatedly, but have not written a court report yet.
That's correct. Yeah. And I think it had to do with the fact that at the time, the boys were with mom. So that was the permanent assignment, if you will, until they were removed in December.
Hmm. And are you also an ed rights holder for the kids?
A what?
An ed rights holder, an education rights holder?
I've never heard that term before.
Right. So that is the term. Like when you had said you were at their school, I had wondered about that. I am the co-ed rights holder for my kiddo, and I was the ed rights holder for the kiddo before. And that basically means you assist in their education decisions.
No, I haven't been involved officially in that. In fact, I mentioned I talked to the principal, and 2 of the boys have a education plan in place, neither of which I contributed to. I just like to visit them at school so I can get a sense for how they interact with teachers and other authority figures and their fellow students and each other in an environment outside the home. So, yeah, I typically go at lunchtime. Sometimes I bring food. Sometimes they eat their own. And then I just love to spend some time on the playground with them, too, because you can just really see, you can learn a lot about kids based on how they interact with others. And, again, they're just very, very impressive.
Yeah, that's funny because my kiddo, when I used to visit her at school, she loved it. And just now she's reached an age where she's like, don't say hello to anybody. Don't wave at anyone.
Right.
Why are you even here? And so I don't know what's going to happen because I feel the same as you. I like to see her in different environments to see how she's getting along, to see what's happening, to see how she's being treated and how she's treating other people. And so how do you feel about the work so far?
I mean, I wish they were closer. I'd try to see them a little more often if I was closer. We do FaceTime, and they know that they can call anytime. I just enjoy spending time with them. Again, they're all very, very different in personality. I mean, the youngest, he runs up, Greg, gives me a big hug, jumps up, just like my own kids used to. The middle son, first thing he does, he just wants to throw a football with me. Mm-hmm. And the older one wants to show me his soccer skills. As siblings often do, they don't always like to play with each other. They all want to play with me, but they don't. Huckleberry doesn't want to share with his brothers on throwing the football, and they don't want to play soccer with the youngest one. Only the oldest 2. So anyway, those sibling things go on, but I love seeing them, and so far they're happy to see me too. On the playground, as soon as I start throwing a ball with one of the boys, the rest of the classmates come running over too. They just love to see an adult on the playground, kind of a novelty. But I really enjoy it. And I haven't had much administrative work to do, really. It's just a matter of going to court and attending the hearings and the family engagement meetings and those kind of things. But most of the discussions are had and led by the caseworker, of course. But they always ask for my thoughts and opinions, and I enjoy having what I think is a pretty objective view to contribute to the rest of the group.
That's the ideal. It is. That's really our role. That nobody owns us. We don't have a dog in the fight except to advocate for the kids and just to take in as much information as possible and help the court to make the best decisions for the kid. And that's kind of how I see it. It's all for. I have found that it gets way more complicated than that once personalities and egos are involved, which is unfortunate. So I'm curious. So, what is your relationship like with the social worker, the caseworker?
It's been fine. I mean, like most, I think, in that business, he's a little overwhelmed with so many cases and being on call nights and weekends. He's pretty frazzled most of the times we're together. But there's no question that he is engaged on my boy's case, and he knows a lot of detail. But I think it tells you a little bit about the system, and that's that there's just not enough people in that line of work to give it, the time that each case deserves. And it also highlights like how many different parts of the system have to come together to actually move the ball in a positive direction. I mean, like I mentioned, these court hearings that require, both parents and both lawyers and the magistrate, sometimes the judge, to get them all in the room together. Sometimes we kick the can a month down the road, and that's doing nobody any good. So, again, it's been an interesting insight for me into a system with which I've had very little engagement before, but I'm glad I can try to help a little bit.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you're doing it because you're probably such a good influence on the boys. Just the fact that you're there, and that I'm assuming that they know that you are there for them, right? I mean, that's probably they really landed on that, I bet.
And I try to hit on that, with each in their own way every time I see them, just to remind them that, I'm keeping up with them. I'm there to help them. In fact, when I first visited the school, they had just moved over to that school right after the Christmas holidays. And, the youngest one, the first thing he said to me is, "How did you find us?"
Oh, gosh.
And, it's just nice to be able to say, like, look, I got an eye on you. No matter where you go, I'm looking out for you.
Yeah, that's really great.
But it just screams for, what you'd assume their feelings would be about, not having consistent adults in their life. They had grandma and grandpa, they were here helping once in a while, but not all the time. Obviously, mom and dad weren't necessarily as present as parents as, we'd like to see. But yeah, it's really touching how important just a consistent adult who's looking out for them is to those kids.
Yeah, my kiddo, she asks me regularly, she says, well, will you always be my CASA? And I said, yeah, I will always be your CASA. I said, she's like, well, what if, because she almost was going to move out of state for a placement. It didn't work out. And she said, well, I don't want to move if it means I won't have you.
Right.
And I said, no. You're going to move if it's good for you, and I'm going to see you. I'm always going to be your CASA. No matter how old you are, no matter what, even if you're in college, I'm going to be your CASA. And I could see every time I remind her of that, it's like a relief.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good feeling. Of course, there's part of me in the back of my head. I'm like, God, I hope I don't die before she's like 50, because it'd be like really a drag.
Yeah.
So, just okay, it's almost a 2-hour drive, so it's a 4-hour drive there and back, right?
Pretty close, yeah. I can get there in an hour and 40, 45, depending on traffic, but I mean, it's a whole day
Yeah,
if
it's
you
a
want
whole
to plan
day.
to go over there.
Now, this is probably particular to Colorado or where you are, and I can imagine probably that's true for a lot of CASAs there. There's going to be some driving. Here in Los Angeles, you know from the get-go, you could have a kid who's a half hour away from you, or you could have a kid who's 2 hours away from you, because Los Angeles County is big. I was really lucky. In general, the drive was less than an hour. Now, unfortunately, my kiddo has been moved, and it's a solid hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours in traffic. And she is saying to me, how come we're not doing this? Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we I said, well, you're really far out now, so I have to plan it a little bit better, because it's the same as what you're talking about. It's a full day. And that's not ideal, because I'm like you. I would see her a couple times a week if I could. I'm not required to, but if I could make a quick hit and just see what's going on with her, because because she was 20 minutes away, I would way prefer that.
Yeah, I'd rather see him more frequently for less amount of time. Because
Yep.
if I do drive out there, I want to spend a couple hours, and that has its challenges too, because the foster home, there's a few other kids in there, and they've got their own things to do, in terms of shuttling them to activities and school. So to find a time that's convenient for Foster and me and the boys are going to be home and they don't have other commitments, that's a challenge. And also, 2 of mine are young enough, they still, by Colorado state law, have to be in a booster seat. So our law is I can't take them if they have to be in a booster seat. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to take them in my vehicle and take them somewhere, but I can't yet.
You can't, because
No.
I got a booster and I could take my kid everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
The way, as I was told, as long as the kid's in a booster seat, they can't go in my vehicle.
Well, maybe because you got that big sexy truck. Is that what it is?
I don't think that's the case. It's pretty safe, but
Yeah, that's strange.
that would make it easier. I'd love to be able to just take them to one of the activities in the area or something, just to get out of the
to
home
the
and again,
movies,
different
or
environment.
or just to get something to eat, or anything, right?
Right.
Well, hopefully that'll be pretty soon. The kids are growing fast, I'm sure, right? So
Yeah, the Colorado, I believe it's either age 8 or age 9 and more than 80 pounds.
wow.
So the
yeah.
youngest has to put on some weight still.
So how do you feel about the foster homes?
It's a great situation.
Wow, that's good. Gosh.
Without getting into too much detail, it's all boys. The oldest boy was recently adopted by the foster. The second oldest, adoption is underway, and my 3 boys are added to that mix. So, the older boys, they know the drill. They've been through similar challenges, so I think that's super helpful. It's the foster dad can, remind them that they're going through a challenge similar to theirs.
Wow, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, so having watched them play with each other and watch TV and eat and do the things that families do, it's a really healthy situation. I love the fact there's some older brothers there. I think boys need a little bit of that roughhousing and straight talk that only an older brother will give sometimes. But boy, really safe. Foster dad's a teacher as well in the same school district, so there's some great support and interaction there. I'm really happy with the situation they're in.
That's really great, because
Yeah.
As you know, it's very often not like that.
Well, it took a long time to find one. I mean, they tried to find one, much closer to mom and dad. There just weren't fosters available that would take all 3.
They would
right?
take
I mean,
all
that's
three,
that's
right?
the challenge.
Right, and they wanted to keep the kids together.
So the distance was preferable if we can keep them all together.
Hmm. You don't have any grandkids, right? Yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
So
No, not yet. So my daughter, yeah, she's in California now. You remember she's up in Santa
yes.
Cruz.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Graduated. In fact, my wife's with her as we speak. She had knee surgery over the Christmas break and did a couple weeks of rehab here. Now she's out in California. She's not even in a relationship now. She's busy working and doing her thing. She's a social worker, if you will, in practice. Undergrad in sociology, looking at grad school, either social work or I believe it's called urban administration.
Mm-hmm.
Both schools are in California.
Mm-hmm.
She's looking to start this fall. And then my son is a junior down at the Air Force Academy, so he doesn't have time for relationships.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I've seen those guys. They probably have lots of dalliances, but not a lot of relationships, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
He's mostly flying. He's flying every day now.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. So, I see that there's something on your wall. It looks like a big ass deer. Okay, so tell me about that.
It is. Well, I grew up in Wisconsin. I mean, we hunted since I was a kid. We grew up, eating venison and rabbit and ducks and geese and things like that. My time in the military, on one hand, it was hard to find places to hunt and people to go with and access to land and whatnot. And I was, deployed and busy for many of those years. But, hunting's always been kind of something I enjoy. I was really glad to see my son took an interest. My daughter, not so much, but my son was interested. And, living out here in Colorado, we did have access to public and some private land. And that deer behind me is my son's first. I've harvested a few from Wisconsin and other states where we've lived over the years, but
harvested. What does that mean?
Well,
harvested?
we taking an animal, we call it harvesting. It's like you'd harvest.
Oh, that's right.
Crops or anything else.
Right, because it supplies you with a freezer full of meat.
We
right.
fill the freezer. Like a deer like that, that's all the red meat we'll use for the winter.
That's a huge deer, right?
Yeah, that deer, that's a mule deer, probably weighed over 200 pounds on the hoof, and it's well over 100 pounds of meat. We do all the butchering ourselves here in the garage, and that's the only mounted animal in my house. My wife, all my antlers are stuck in a box in the garage, but I told my wife,
what? Say that again.
My wife's not a big fan of animal heads. She's cool with eating the meat. She likes venison and elk and all that, but and we were moving around a lot too, so you don't always have a home where you can hang something like that. But my son got that one. I told my wife, I said, look, he may never see a bigger deer in his life, and eventually when he gets his own house, we'll send it his way. But since it was his first one, we decided to get it mounted and gave it to him as a birthday present.
So in your basement you have a box of antlers or a box of heads or what?
Just antlers from deer I've got over the years.
Huh.
Wisconsin, Maryland, Montana. I might be missing one, but yeah, but my wife wouldn't let me mount any of mine, but she acquiesced for our son. Yeah,
we were in Canada recently, and we were at someone's home where it truly is farm to table. Everything on the table pretty much was from their garden or an animal that they had harvested, and it included the cheese and the butter and all the nuts and the vegetables. It's like there was a little bit of store-bought stuff, but not a whole lot. And I was like, this is how you live every day? Like, it's a lot of work.
It's a ton of work, and I'm fortunate. I mean, we don't do it for subsistence per se, although we would never shoot anything. We didn't intend to eat every bit of it. But many seasons out here in Colorado, elk hunting, for example, I mean, we've spent days and days hiking miles and miles at high altitude, getting nothing but frostbite and blisters, and
Right.
never seeing an animal. It's a ton of work.
Wow.
But when you
Wow.
do get one, everybody pitches in. You carry it, in your pack a couple miles off the mountain, and sometimes a couple trips. And it's less about the meat itself, although we do love that, enjoy it. We never waste a bit. But it's about I don't know, the spiritual nature of it, being out in nature, like nobody else around, dead quiet. Being part of our primordial past. It's good for the soul. And, I think being out in nature is important to everybody, but especially if you can get far out in nature, like
Yeah, like
where
really
there's
far out.
no
Yeah.
light pollution and no noises. And it's a long way out to the point that you got to be really careful that you take care of yourself, because it's real deal. We were in the Flat Tops Wilderness and a long way from help. So I don't know. There's something special about that. It's a spiritual experience.
Will that be something you'll be able to do with the kids when they're old enough, with the boys?
They do tell stories of having fished with their dad. And again, I would love to take them. As soon as they're old enough that I can take my vehicle, we've got places we can go. We can go fish and hike and get on an ATV and go just get up in the mountains a little bit away from it all. I think that's super, super helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
That's something, unfortunately, this generation, I don't think, has had the opportunity to be exposed to the outdoors. And I can't imagine, like in LA, I mean, there's people that have never been outside the city.
Right.
Like you said, it's hours to get away from the
Yes.
city. So absolutely, I look forward to the day when I can take them out. They're proud of having spent time fishing with Dad. They talk about it sometimes, and I hope that day will come.
Do you feel that the work has changed you? I mean, I'll just say you're a pretty special guy. Just the way you talk about things that are important to you and your own personal values. But so I don't know how much you can improve, but I'm just curious. Has it changed you for
Well,
the
that's
better
very
or the
generous.
worse or what?
We can certainly all improve. I think probably more than anything, it makes me so appreciative for things that maybe we take for granted too much. I was very fortunate to have been raised in a household where, I had both mom and dad home, and both mom and dad worked, and, they impressed upon us values like hard work and doing your best in school. And, they were active in the church and in scouting and, all those things that helped us grow up as pretty well-rounded kids. I try to do the same with my kids. And, as I watch my kids thrive doing what they wanted to do, they worked hard enough to have opportunities. Probably the thing that is, I don't know if it's changed, but certainly reinforced my thankfulness for what I had and what I was able to give my kids, and, makes me really optimistic about their future and, the communities around them because of that. That's, if we want to change the world, the best thing we can do is raise good kids, ours or others.
That is so true. That's it. That's like the bottom line right there. Yeah. Well, good on you, Rosie.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've mentioned it to a few other people, and hopefully we can recruit a few more. I think your podcast hopefully will convince a few people that it's worth the time. As I've told people, I mean, the fact is it's not a ton of time. It's just super important.
That's a really good way to say it, because people are worried about the time. Well, for you, the driving is an issue, and that's true for a lot of people. But yeah, it's not really the time is not it, but the work is so important. It truly is. I mean, I say to people, you really can change a child's life.
Yeah, I think probably on average, for me, it's a couple hours a week if you take the drive out of it. It's, going to the courtroom. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and a half, but that's only once or twice a week on the busy weeks, and that might only be 4 times a month. And then there's gaps where you don't really do anything. Sometimes we FaceTime the kids, and as you know, they're young, and sometimes they'll talk for 2 minutes and then go on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Talking to a grown-up on the phone is just not something they're wanting to spend a lot of time. And I get that. It never hurts my feelings. I just want them to know that, I'm a phone call away. And when I go visit them, again, sometimes, one wants to throw the football the entire time, and the others kind of take off and do their own thing. And that's totally cool. In fact, to me, that's almost a good sign. Like, our goal as CASAs is to, get to a point where they don't need us so much, right?
That's right. Right. That is exactly it. Where they really don't need us because everything's working out. That's
right. Just like our own kids. I mean, our goal is to get them out the door safely and equipped to face the world. And, that's the reward.
Is there anything else you want to add now, Rosie?
I don't think so. I really appreciate your opportunity to share my experience and others towards the end of maybe getting some more volunteers and helping, just get the word out about the program and the need. I hope, in the next few months, there will be some developments one way or the other with the family. That's the hardest part for any of us, right? It's just the unknown, just like it is for the kids. It's the unknown that is the biggest challenge. And, no matter how much time you spend with them or how quality that time is, we just can't move the ball that much with respect to the process.
Yeah, and it takes a really long time no matter what. It's painstakingly slow.
But, that's how we make the world better. We just do what we can, right?
That's right.
Control the things you control and don't worry too much about the rest. Just, be good to people and make good choices and, hopefully make a couple people better along the way.
I like that. Thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie, for coming again to speak with us and share your experience being a CASA. Something struck me about this last interview that I find very valuable, and that's the experience of being in nature. And I believe that those kids that are lucky enough to have you as a CASA get to possibly have that experience of the serenity of being in nature, that spiritual experience you were talking about. It can be a real asset to healing. There's a certain awesomeness about nature, something that's so much bigger than ourselves, especially seeing it through the eyes of someone like yourself who has an extraordinary amount of experience and can share the wonders of what nature has to offer. So, again, thank you very much, Rosie. Be sure to check in for our next episode. We have tons of great guests coming up. Thank you, and be well. If you or someone you know is harming themselves or thinking about harming themselves, go to crisistextline.org. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org. And in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.